Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity again, Natalie, and for fitting me into the schedule today, today's agenda. I had a little communication breakdown that made it challenging, made Natalie's job a lot harder last week, so I appreciate the even greater level of cooperation. Today I want to present to you in this virtual format our 19th annual Timber Harvest Forestry Practices Tour. I'm also combining it with the 2020 Wildland Fire Tour because of this virtual format and we're so late in the year. I do one of each of these, and as you can see from this title, the rest of the title, today's topic will cover both of these issues. 106 Reforestation Fuels Reduction Pilot Project. I'm Darren McAvoy, Extension Assistant Professor at Utah State University. Little quick outline, why are we talking about this today? What makes it noteworthy and newsworthy? Why are we presenting it to you and reporting on it? And what it is. What is the 106 method? Why we think it might be able to be helpful. And then we'll take a look at the history of how it got here and a little deeper look at some of 106 methods and results, and look at USU's role in the program. So the first question is why, and it's certainly newsworthy because the state legislature awarded them $2 million through the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands to do this work. Here's a copy of the legislative language. And I just want to point out about midway down, it asks what is the public purpose of this, and it points out, number one, fire mitigation blocks, number two, promote growth of new aspen stands. Those are the ones that we will be focusing on more in this presentation. And eventually, I'm happy to see that they put out the call for more research right off the bat. Improved habitat for wildlife and livestock. Number four, increased water retention. Number five, decreased fire ash into fisheries. And finally, number six, improved air quality. So we have lots to look at over the coming years. And as mentioned, the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Land is administering the pilot project. Bill mentioned he's the on-the-ground forester for it. Jerry has been doing a lot of higher level work and setting up the contracts and things like that to keep this going. I know several other employees are doing the same sort of work out there. Rudy Sandoval is going to have his hands full burning those piles. And Brian Cotton has been a huge supporter right from the get-go. And it's important because private landowners, ranch managers, Division of Wildlife Resources are all choosing to have this done on their property. So it's something we should be paying attention to. I'm really pleased. We talked about it yesterday in the shared stewardship meeting about the positive relationships we all are enjoying with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands these days. And I want to echo those comments from yesterday. Brian Cotton, I very much appreciate that he reached out to us at Forestry Extension here at USU to help us convene, or asked us to convene a research team to start look at these at the questions that I pointed out. And these are our partners. It's mostly between Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and USU Department of Wildland Resources. But these other partners are very important. So the Rockies Fire Science Network supports a lot of the work that I do, including my annual Wildland Harvest Tour, the Utah DNR, the Forest Service, the BLM, Biomass Group in Utah, and the Utah Prescribed Fire Council are all important players in almost all the work that I do. And we were asked, I'm honored to be the liaison for the project as USU Forestry Extension. Okay, jumping in to what it is. It's a form of mechanical disturbance. Take two of the biggest bulldozers you've ever seen and connect them by a large cable, a long cable similar to what you might ride on a chairlift, an 1.5-inch cable or so, and on winches, as you can see in the back of the tractors there, and then put a roller ball at the inflection point of those cables, of the cable, so it stays 4 feet off the ground, and link the two dozers with this proprietary software that 106 is developing called Dozer Link, or perhaps I think I have that wrong. It might be Dozer Sync, but so it is sort of like modern combines, production agriculture, just modern large-scale technology brought to some pressing issues here in Utah and across the West. Here's the roller drum that I talked about. This is the original one. I'll show you modifications. They don't use this one so much anymore. These are pictures from about a year ago. I got to go visit and see one of their first polls is the language they use, and you'll see why. And you can see on the photo on the right some of the rigging. It's like fishing line, swivels, just on steroids. So the suspended cable provides leverage. It's an important sort of mechanical point. And so the trees tend to be all broken and uprooted and they're all laid over. It's different from any disturbance I've ever seen. I've been around and worked in hurricane disturbance and a lot of fire disturbance and avalanche disturbance and many others. And it is certainly different. So I guess as I say that, in some ways it's closest to avalanche disturbance, the way it tips things over. Let's see if our video is going to work. So I don't know if you can hear that. Turn up your sound if you can. It's just a 10-second thing, but you can see why we're calling this roller felling. Although I think it's open to debate still what we're calling it. And during COVID times, it's more challenging to get together and decide these things. It seems the cable is doing a lot of the felling, but we're calling it roller felling for now, and that's fine. And here are the results. As I mentioned, a little bit like an avalanche. Everything is bowled over and tipped over. Nothing left essentially sticking up out of the ground. And then there's a cleanup phase, and various levels of cleanup are possible depending on the landowner needs and the steepness of the slope. And we're studying 3 different levels. USU is studying 3 different levels of cleanup. And this is what an average cleanup looks like. Thanks to 106 Reforestation for this image. Brenner Adams stitched together for us. Shows what they'll typically windrow the material, as you can see in the middle, and then it's up to Rudy Sandoval to get in there and burn it. I hope to work with Rudy in the coming years and with 106 and the Division of Forestry to turn more of that into a usable charcoal. It's an important part of forest health in the West, but that's another story. So why it can be helpful? Why are we doing this thing that on the front of it looks pretty destructive? And the idea is that this treatment is going to target specific forest types that we see here on the right. As an aging aspen with significant conifer understory. There's quite a bit of this in the state. We can't use this tool on every acre. There's acres that'll be too steep and too rocky, and so it will be like any tool. It's specific to certain needs and applications. But for otherwise inaccessible areas, this is providing a new management option. Here's a pre-treatment photo. You can see a line going off to the right there, a tape. And just, we all know this, conifer taking over an aspen stand. It's easy to visualize for most of us here. This stand in 30 or 50 years, when it's almost all conifer, you can hardly see any aspen through it. And this is a common story across Utah. We spend a lot of time talking about this. And it's based on a lack of disturbance in a lot of these acres. And here's a photo showing the airy view from the top of the Bruin Point Road. Down there in the desert bottom, 5,000 feet below you, is the road between Price and Green River, Highway 6. It's a tough road. There are tougher roads in Utah, but I still get the willies just driving up it in a 4-wheel drive pickup. And to ask a logger to drive down it is obviously pretty difficult. Natalie Conlin was the area forester in this area and worked with this landowner for a long time, and other landowners up there trying to get loggers up on the Tavaputs Plateau, but after years of trying, no luck. And part of it, it should be said, is just the distance from sawmills. As I mentioned, I like to refer to it, or I see it as mechanical disturbance. The 106 crew likes to call it mechanical fire, and you can see why. As a fire and forest ecologist, I debate this with them a little bit because it is different results than fire, but you can see how perhaps it might have greater public acceptance than fire does because there's no smoke and no chance of escape. With just this treatment as it is, and we all know and read in the news and experienced directly the challenges with dealing with smoke in the air and other escapes this year. And it can be used to help with prescribed fire, we think, and 106 believes, as a tool to create perimeters around prescribed fire. This is a prescribed fire to promote aspen. The BLM did perhaps 15 or 10 or so years ago, Otter Creek, south of Bear Lake. And it's in the stand is in a sea of sagebrush, so it did not need a perimeter cut around it because we were burning it as the sagebrush still had high moisture content in early July. But overall, by doing this like fire, it can add landscape to the diversity. It can add landscape scale diversity. And so I'm saying this won't add diversity to this particular acre right here, but if we add young forests to the landscape, overall we will provide greater diversity at that scale. Of course, part of it is fire risk mitigation. If we have more acres in young aspen, it's less likely to carry fire. The foreground of this photo is from Mike's ranch, from work he did prior to this with just a bulldozer. I'll talk about it a little more. And it has improved wildlife habitat. I unfortunately cut the deer off there on the right side of my photography skills, but and part of the desired result is to be more prepared for a mega fire event, break up the landscape that way. And the developer of this technology is heeding our call. We've been saying it for years, and I heard it in yesterday's shared stewardship meeting. Jason Johnson mentioned it. We need to increase the pace and scale of treatments. And so this is his approach, his way of listening to our request. And that would be Mike Saparis, who'd be the owner and developer of this 106 Reforestation. I've been working with Mike. Natalie introduced us. It was 10 years ago. This photo is Mike here on the right speaking at our, I think at 2014, annual timber harvest tour, as we see at the inset of the Utah Forest News below. And at that time, he was just using a bulldozer, but he was using a bulldozer to bulldozing aspen to grow aspen, essentially. And you can see in the foreground of the photograph the kind of luck that he was having, short-term incredible aspen propagation. So he believes, based on this evidence and for good reason, that this method can be expanded, and that's what we're looking at today. Mike was host of our harvest tour and is the 2011 Forest Landowner of the Year awarded by this committee, this Forest Stewardship Coordinating Committee. And so Mike is applying his business background. He's got a background in medical software development and other businesses and business innovation. And he's applying that to what he has been listening to Natalie and I and many others say for years about how we need to change and do more management. And so the process details, it starts off with site selection, working with Bill Zanotti, as I mentioned, the forester, see his approval on the site. An archaeology study has to be done beforehand. And of course, the landowner has to approve this beforehand. So, they start with cutting a dozer perimeter around the site, and then the other dozers come in, and it's all GPS guided. And so this is a little picture of what the roller felling looks like. I have another video embedded here. and you can watch these conifers tipping over for the next couple of seconds. I don't know any fall or buncher who can tip over conifers that quickly. So you can see how it's taken the pace and scale, and within a few minutes, pretty much all the stand that we see up right there is tipped over. I want to point out the football-shaped roller ball on the right side of your screen. That innovation 106 made allows, the prior one would tend to get stuck a little bit more, and this allows it to move through the woods a little bit easier. And then the cleanup phase would be the last step in the process. Pile burning, as I've mentioned before, would be the last step in the process. And so USU is investigating 3 different treatment methods that could represent the range of options that landowners may or may not choose. It could be done with this method. In the middle of this photo, you see mostly the leave alone, no cleanup method. And to the left, I think that's a partial cleanup. 50% cleanup. So I was standing at the bottom of this photo looking up, and 106 put this together for us. So it gives you a feel for what we're looking at, and this is the same ground and how much fuel there is with each different choice. And so on the left is medium cleanup, and the center is 0 cleanup. On the right is kind of 100% cleanup. And it should be pointed out, this research is just a first step in understanding how these treatments will impact forests. As a forester, I'm always concerned about what this is going to look like 10, 20, 50, 150 years down the road. And we can make some guesses and conjecture with the research that we're collecting here in the next few years. But it's we always want to keep our eye to that future that way. And I want to introduce quickly our research team. Dr. Larissa Yoakum is our fire ecology professor on the left, and going left to right, Dr. Justin DeRose is our silviculture professor, replaced Jim Long, Dr. Jim Long, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now. And they stuck their neck out as we were getting this whole team stuck their neck out to get these pieces in place before we had all the contracts in place. We had to ask Kristen and Allie to quit their jobs and move here before we even had contracts in place. So they took a big leap of faith and deserve a little extra thanks for that sort of work. Here's Kristen, head down, measuring plots. This is what it looks like out there. They come back pretty beat up and bruised. It's not very easy country to work in, and you can see why it's been so hard to get any logging done or any harvesting done in this sort of ground. And we're investigating, Larissa in particular is leading the charge on investigating changes in potential fire behavior in aspen as a result of these treatments. And we're investigating the regeneration response. That's what Justin's main purpose or goal is. This photo, again, from some of Mike's work back when it was just the bulldozer. And Justin's also leading the charge on investigating the efficiency of the cost per acre. 106's stated goal is efficacy and affordability at scale. So we're helping them to get a handle on measuring that. And early results from 106 indicate that they can do up to 50 acres per day. And the day that I was there a few weeks ago, where several of these pictures are from, I just did a quick calculation in the few minutes that we were there, and it was about 4 minutes for an acre to be pulled, as the language is. This is Boston. Mike's former golden retriever is long since passed away. Mike had a special place willed into his old cab for Boston, showing the kind of success that you can have in aspen with these sorts of treatments. Again, this was just straight bulldozer, but we think and hope it might represent the kind of thing we expect from the cable roll, the roller felling. And USU will have short-term results from our research in 1 to 2 years. I'm not sure if I pointed out how important it is that this might be able to be used in conjunction with prescribed fire, that it can be used as a perimeter cutting tool. I guess maybe I did touch on that. And I wanted to point out some more innovations. I've mentioned the roller drum innovations. From the drum to the football on the left. They've made changes in their dozers and all their rigging. It's a constant innovation and changing. They've created this thing called a shark blade that looks like one of those great big snow moving devices you might see in the wintertime, and over 120 versions of their dozer sync software constantly being updated and reiterated. I want to thank all the partners that brought today's presentation together, including 106 Reforestation, Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands, Department of Wildland Resources, and my colleagues here, Forestry Extension. This photo is from the Harvest Tour on Mike's property, and many of you were there. I wish I could be with you, having a meal together as we see at another Harvest Tour. It's one of the highlights for me, is getting to feed everybody and just spend a few minutes together. And to me, one of the important parts of this event is always creating community in our forestry community, and hopefully we'll be able to continue those efforts in the future in person. Thank you very much.